Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting me for this very interesting symposium, connecting thoughts, ideas, methods of Copenhagen, Denmark, and Rio de Janeiro and Brazil.
Unindo aqui a Dinamarca e o Brasil. Temos muito a aprender uns com os outros, no meu entender, e envolvendo a comunidade no desenvolvimento urbano.
I have been part of this common and communities project since the very
participado desse projeto com as comunidades desde o início. Começou pelo nosso conselho de arquitetos lá da Dinamarca. Estamos fizemos primeiro uma viagem muito interessante para Chicago, a cidade de Detroit, e também Detroit, nos Estados Unidos. Foi aí que a gente começou a aprender um pouco sobre a nossa abordagem arquitetônica para podermos contribuir com o desenvolvimento de cidades e comunidades no mundo inteiro. Eu tenho formação, eu tenho um histórico de ativista, eu não sou arquiteto, não trabalho com planejamento, eu comecei criando projetos culturais na cidade e aprendi como envolver as comunidades no desenvolvimento urbano através de diferentes projetos comunitários. E como esses projetos comunitários no nível político. Então, hoje eu gostaria de falar para vocês um pouquinho sobre meu histórico, para que vocês compreendam melhor um pouco do método que eu estou usando nesse trabalho com as comunidades, com a organização de comunidades. Eu vou falar com vocês também um pouco sobre o projeto que montamos, ou melhor, que demos início no Rio de Janeiro, né? E isso foi logo no iniciozinho, antes assim que a pandemia nos atingiu, né? Esse projeto não está concluído, não está estabelecido, porque nós tivemos que adiá-lo por causa da Covid. Mas eu vou falar para vocês sobre o nosso pensamento inicial e como é que nós continuamos dando desenvolvimento a esses projetos nesses quase 2 anos já, seguindo até 2023. Muito bem, para falar para vocês um pouco sobre o trabalho que eu estou fazendo, eu devo dizer que eu trabalho com organização comunitária, que é um processo onde as partes interessadas da comunidade se reúnem para fazer ações coletivas e para gerar soluções para problemas que são comuns. Eu não só me foco nos cidadãos e na sociedade civil, eu também gosto de envolver o setor público e o setor privado, porque eu acredito que as melhores soluções são feitas a partir de uma combinação de várias óticas diferentes e envolvendo várias partes interessadas. E para explicar como isso funciona, eu gostaria de apresentar para vocês esse caso, no qual estou trabalhando já há uns 10 anos, mais ou menos. Essa foto mostra a mim e o outro fundador do nosso espaço, da nossa organização, onde trabalhamos com esse trabalho, trabalhamos com essa ação, de desenvolver a comunidade não só na Dinamarca, não só na Europa, mas também na vida local aqui do Rio e na América do Sul como um todo. E, a propósito, mais uma vez, obrigado pela grande colaboração, especialmente o Instituto Cultural Dinamarquês, né? E todos os que participaram. O Christian e eu, que estamos aqui na foto, nós aprendemos que para podermos criar bons projetos comunitários, é necessário envolver as pessoas numa fase inicial, para podermos criar soluções em conjunto. Aqui você nos vê
buildings that had been standing empty for 5 years. So we thought this was such a shame that these buildings were just standing when so many artists, community organizations, architects, students were looking for facilities to create their own projects. So we contacted the owner and got permission to borrow the buildings for a 2-year period to experiment what we could do with these buildings and how we could create a good community project that could bring value to the local neighborhood. However, when we looked into the buildings, they were very trashed and worn down, and we didn't have much money to establish the activities. So we created an open call where we invited everyone who had an interest in community organizing, community projects, to develop the solutions together with us. And within a couple of months, we had filled out the buildings with 150 people, very keen to create different projects that could give great experiences for the local neighborhood and the whole city as such. And they created all kinds of different projects. There were workshops within bicycle workshops, motorcycle workshops, ceramics. There was wooden workshops. There was co-working spaces. There was ateliers, galleries. There was a community urban garden, and there was a venue with different cultural activities. So within a very short period, we established an association for this great area that could create these different projects on themselves. And gradually, we left over or gave the responsibility to this association so that they could create their own ownership and negotiate a new deal with the owner for continuing doing different activities in this great location. And this has become the method that we have been working with since then in different projects around Denmark and around the world. So what happens, when you look into community organizing or community building in urban development, is that especially in big urban development projects, as you see around big cities around the world, it's very complex, and it takes a lot of economic investment. And this means that the projects do not really have time to involve broadly the local community. And we do find that this is a shame. And here you see a model of how you can engage people in these urban development projects. And traditionally, in urban development projects, they will move around the lower steps of the ladder. So they inform the local community what will happen, but they don't really involve the local citizens in or the local stakeholders in the solutions. So what we try to do with our projects, we try to step up the ladder and end up with the top ladder where it's co-creation. So when you need to co-create, you can't define the answers or the solutions in advance. You have to involve the local communities to create the solutions together. So when we go out, we try to ask, how should we do it if we want to create the future together? And with the answers we get, we can start designing the solutions together, not only with the community, but also with local community organizations or institutions, and even the municipalities that we are working with. In order to create a process that is that can be handled both from the local community and from the municipal level, you have to frame the project in a way where everyone understands what they're being part of. So here you see a model in 5 phases. The first phase is to frame the project. This is where we create the overall vision, the overall strategy, and the overall timeline and economy. And once you have that established, people know what they can expect from the project. And this is so important for community projects, that people understand what they're being part of. Once you have established the framework, you can go out and start map what are the local resources, you could say. Who would like to be part of this project, and who can provide different experiences or professions to help establish this community project. And once you know and have learned about the local community, you can start activating. And the activating is with our work, primarily focusing on cultural events. Culture is a great way of meeting each other and learning to collaborate in new ways, and also to experiment or prototype with future solutions that can then be scaled up. And the experience you get from doing these events, you can then anchor with the local community. So you can start to create traditions and start to organize it so that the local community can continue to create these activities on their own. And once you have start anchoring the projects, you can create a resilient community that can not only take these projects, but also future projects from future urban development projects, or when a new pandemic will occur, or when new urban development projects will happen. And in that way, you will broaden out the ownership and the capacity of creating great cities to a much broader range of stakeholders. And this is the overall vision that we are working with. And this is also what we have tried to do in RIO with the Vida RIO projects. And I must say also to begin with that I'm so humble and honored to have experienced the great work that all the great people are doing in Rio Comprido, working with this square that in the future hopefully will gather more people, more local citizens on different experiences that can create future solutions for the city. Coming from, you could say, a Danish background where we have a welfare state and are quite privileged, and also somewhat used to having the state handle our solutions, and going to Rio and seeing the ownership, the responsibility the local community take to create these solutions for themselves has been so inspiring. And this is just to say that for me, it's important to say that for us in Denmark, we can learn as much from you guys as you can learn from us in Denmark. And this is why I'm so happy with this collaboration between the UIA 2020 in Rio de Janeiro and the UIA 2023 in Copenhagen. But the vision of the Vida RIO project was to build a better community together and show the world through the UIA and the World Congress of Architects that the best solutions are made through partnerships and local engagement. And if this should be successful, you need to understand that there's 2 levels in these processes. There's the political level, what you can call the top down, and there's the community level, what you can call the bottom up. And in order to create sustainable solutions, I would argue that these two levels should be combined. And this is what our ambition is with the Vida Local RIO project, to combine these levels and create a common solution together. So how do we do this? We use culture as a driver. Again, as I told you, culture is a great way of creating awareness, creating attention, mobilizing people, and start to develop new solutions. This is where you can see dedicated people take ownership over public spaces. You can start experimenting with sustainable ways of using existing resources, and you get positive attention to these areas in focus. So in order to succeed with this in Vida Local RIO, we have focused on creating a community group where we can build up capacity together and organize this group through a temporary transformation of this square. And because we're also part of the UIA and World Capital of Architects context, we can also look at the city partnerships, because there's a great focus and investment through the city in these urban projects. So to create the city partnerships and establish some kind of steering committee of partners representing the community, the municipality, university, and businesses is also a focal point, together with creating a worldwide network. And this is where we look obviously at the UIA context in Rio and in Copenhagen. But initially, to start up the project, we focused on a timeline where we had 5 focal points. So we, from my perspective, I was planning on going to Rio de Janeiro for 3 times during last year, ending at the UIA Congress. Because of the pandemic, I only went once. So unfortunately, we are not done with this project, but we'll take it up or begin again, hopefully within the next year or so. But initially, we focused on creating partnerships. We began to develop ideas on solutions for the local square. We initiated some activities. Then the plan was to also present the project at the UIA Congress, but now I will present the thoughts we have done so far and the experience we have so far, and then looking at the anchoring of the project afterwards. The activities we have been focusing on or had planned for was for the first trip I went for Rio in March was a kind of prototyping event. Then we later during the spring we would make a community dinner, then a bigger cultural event that we could showcase at the symposium. For the first trip, what we succeeded in doing was to create some kind of steering group with representatives also from the university, the municipality, the design center, a network of companies, and the local community organization, Baixo Rio. Then we involved the students from the university so that they could use their semester on creating solutions, architectural solutions for this area that were to be exhibited at the UIA Congress. And then we created this, what I call the prototyping event, where a lot of local community organizations came together and presented the great work they do at this square in Rio Comprido. And this was an absolutely unique experience for me to see the great engagement from these different organizations, and I'm looking so much forward to coming back to Rio once again it's safe with the pandemic to travel. Furthermore, what we're looking at now, also with the great collaboration with the Danish Cultural Institute, is to see how we can take these learnings, these experiences from Rio de Janeiro and Rio Comprido and take them into the UIA in 2023 in Copenhagen. And I think I have spent my 20 minutes, but I will be happy to answer any questions this has raised once the panel discussion opens. Thank you so much.
Ok. Muito obrigado, Jesper.
Thank you very much, Jesper. It's such a pleasure to see you once again virtually. And as you said, I'm very sure that we'll have moments of meeting again, of hugging one another, and of collective construction. As that you systematize, and the case of Rio Comprido was a very special case. You, with all your experience, engaged in these cultural activities as an anchor for the construction of more resilient and stronger communities. What is interesting, I think you have noticed, that is that there are many communities that activate situations that are extremely resilient, but that very moment of work, that it was the square, it was the very meeting of everyone. And also it's like several focuses that go through that center point. So your work was very key for us to start making this tessiture of all these people that are there resisting, and even more than resisting, building a life of dignity that many times the city cannot offer. So thank you so much for your speech. We will meet again at the end during the debate at the conclusion, and then let's move to the next point of our agenda. Thank you very much, Jesper.